In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night."
God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night and the stars. God set them in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night.
Something here is not right. Since time immemorial, humankind has used the apparent movement of the sun in the sky as the means of counting days and nights. In fact, most life on our planet follows the pattern of sunrises and sunsets in one way or another. But in this famous passage on the creation of the universe, 3 days had passed before the sun was created. There are more contradictions and inconsistencies within the text that make it an unreliable instruction manual on how to create a universe. This passage is one of the main targets for those attacking religious beliefs based on the Bible, because it plainly goes against our basic knowledge of the universe. People of faith face the unenviable task of defending it as part of their beliefs. Various strategies are adopted, from a blatant insistence on scientific knowledge being completely wrong, through elaborate and inventive ways of counting the biblical days of creation, to sweeping the text aside. Move on, nothing to see here. All those faith strategies share with the adversaries the wrong assumption that this text is a scientific description of the creation of the universe. It's time to put it right. As humankind, we have always asked and tried to find answers to certain perennial questions, like where did we come from, why there is evil, and so on. The first 11 chapters of the Bible are a kind of reflection on the universe, on humankind, the existence of evil, hostilities among people, and so on. The answers we find in those chapters are not scientific ones in modern terms, but the folklore of the Middle East. The language is poetic or of folk stories, reaching back to time immemorial. Those stories offer explanations based on the popular understanding of names, places, divisions, and so on. Those 11 chapters lay foundations for the narrative that follows, and starts with Abram, the first character in the Bible we can call a historical figure. Biblical scholars often refer to those 11 chapters as prehistory. In the next few episodes, I will look closer at some events mentioned in those 11 chapters, giving us a better understanding of their meaning. Let's go back to the creation of the universe found in the first chapter and a bit of the second of the Bible. There are two distinctive features of the text indicating that this is a poem. There was evening and there was morning, the first day. There was evening, and there was morning, the second day. The second feature is this: and God saw that it was good, repeated at the end of each day. This passage is a poetic meditation on the beauty of the universe, full of amazement and awe. Most of us have had a similar experience when we saw some natural beauty, though most likely we expressed that by simple "oh wow" instead of writing a poem or bursting into a song. The human author who composed this poem conveyed some revolutionary ideas. Revolutionary for his times. In ancient times, the natural world was inhabited by a great variety of gods, goddesses, and deities, each given their own domain to rule. We are most familiar with the Greek and Roman pantheon of gods. For example, Poseidon was the god of the sea, storms, earthquakes, and horses. Less familiar to us, mythologies of the Middle East had a plethora of low-rank deities ruling various parts of the universe, not to mention the crazy myths of how the universe came to be. The Enuma Elish is the Babylonian creation myth that gives us insight into those polytheistic beliefs. The biblical story offered a completely different narrative. The universe was created out of nothing. The universe was created by one and only God. That God is not part of the universe. To use a fancy philosophical term, God is transcendent. Consequently, neither the universe as a whole nor any part of it is divine. It's all secular. Nowadays, we take such statements as pretty much obvious, but back in the days when the biblical poem was created, it was a message that was contrary to the commonly held beliefs. Secondly, the structure of the poem showed the universe created in an orderly fashion and essentially good. Again, it was in contrast with the then common beliefs that the world was the fighting arena or a playground for gods. According to the biblical poem, everything in the universe had its place and purpose, following its rules and laws given by the Creator without God's micromanagement. Thirdly, the poem's structure is based on 7 days, with the last one being a day of rest, reflecting the Jewish week. The origins of such an arrangement are not clear. Some scholars connect it to the Babylonian calendar, but there are unsolvable problems with that, which we can leave to professional researchers. Based on the strict rules regarding the Sabbath in the law of Moses, we can assume that keeping the Sabbath was a bit of a challenge, to put it mildly. The author of the biblical poem added religious or divine reason for resting every 7th day. Nowadays we take it for granted, but in most ancient cultures and civilizations, a day of rest wasn't everyone's privilege. That's why the law of Moses listed workers, slaves, and domesticated animals among those who must have been given a day off every 7th day. Death was the prescribed punishment for breaching the Sabbath. So, does the biblical description have any meaningful significance to us? The answer is no and yes. If you want to produce a homemade universe, the Bible isn't the place to go. For that purpose, you have to consult scientists of various disciplines. You can start with Georges Lemaitre, who in 1927 proposed a scientific theory on the beginning of the universe that his opponents mockingly called the Big Bang Theory. The name stuck, and the theory is now widely accepted as correct. Did I mention that Georges Lemaitre was a Belgian Jesuit priest? For people of faith, the biblical story of creation remains an important part of our understanding of the universe and our place within it. It lays the foundation for the subsequent elements of the faith. John Paul II offered a great understanding of the relationship between science and religious faith. Both religion and science must preserve their autonomy and their distinctiveness. Religion is not founded on science, nor is science an extension of religion. Each should possess its own principles, its pattern of procedures, its diversities of interpretation, and its own conclusions. 10 years later, John Paul II expanded on this subject in the encyclical Fides and Ratio, Faith and Reason. I strongly recommend reading it. The link is in the description below. To conclude, I'd like to invite you to listen to a rendition of this beautiful poem by a couple of my friends. Perhaps you can join them in the amazement and awe over the beauty of our world. Thank you for watching.
In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said, "Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." So God made the dome, and separated the waters that were under the dome from the waters that were above the dome. And it was so. God called the dome sky. And there was evening, and there was morning, the second day. And God said, "Let the waters under the sky be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit with the seed in it." And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed of every kind, and trees of every kind bearing fruit with the seed in it. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be lights in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth." And it was so. God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night and the stars.
God set them in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the fourth day. And God said, Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the dome of the sky. So God created the sea monsters and every living creature that moves of every kind with which the waters swarm, and every winged bird of every kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, Be fruitful and multiply and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. And there was evening and there was morning, the fifth day. And God said, Let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creeping things, and wild animals of the earth of every kind. And it was so. God made the wild animals of the earth every kind, and the cattle of every kind, and everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over the wild animals of the earth, and every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God he created them, male and female he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. God said, See, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food. And it was so. God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all their multitude. And on the seventh day God finished the work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all the work that he had done in creation.